So I was doing some thinking, and one of the most interesting things, which I think I'm starting to believe more and more as I continue to think about this idea, is that I think we have somewhat of a moral obligation to excellence. And when I say moral obligation to excellence, I think what I mean is whatever we choose to pursue in terms of a large endeavor or in terms of any habit, any space that we take up, our obligation morally would be to be as excellent as possible in these scenarios. And I think this can be applied to I think this can be applied to really anything that we do in life. You know, the saying, if it's worth doing, do it well, or how you do one thing is how you do everything comes to mind. But I think this thought like cuts a little deeper than that. In terms of if you're brushing your teeth, you got to do that stuff well, or like oral hygiene is like an overarching task. There are some folks who brush their teeth once a day, and then there's some folks who floss and brush twice a day, and do all this other stuff in which they maintain their oral hygiene as excellent as opposed to just well. And guess who ends up not needing veneers 20, 30 years down the line. This moral obligation isn't just something that isn't just something that's beneficial to others. It also is conversely beneficial to us. It's a win-win situation, and I think this can be applied to my first job, in which I was a bathroom cleaner and a kitchen cleaner and a dishes cleaner at an ice cream shop. They called it an expediter, where the whole entire point was since they were so busy during the summer, all the employees that they had were too busy, making the ice cream, handing it out. They had all different types, and they didn't have anybody to clean the bathrooms and the dishes and stuff. And this was during COVID as well, so we had to be extra sanitary in everything that we did. And they hired somebody whose whole purpose was just to clean, and they thought that after a few months, after the demand would die down due to the summertime turning into to autumn, they would let me go. But I was so good at cleaning the toilet, and I was so good at cleaning the dishes, and I was so good at mopping the floors and sweeping the floors that they couldn't help but keep me on, because there's something implicit about that obligation to excellence that went deeper than just my work. And it was my first job, and like realizing that they had hired me, they took a chance on a 16-year-old kid with like obviously nothing on my resume. Like, I wanted to prove myself to them and make sure that they had made a good decision with who they chose to hire. And in that case is how like I was able to develop this. And that obligation to excellence, which I had within me, not only made sure that like the job that I fulfilled was not only done, but it was done to the absolute best of my ability. Meaning it was done very well objectively, but it ended up helping me out in the process, because I ended up working with them until I was 19 years old. Not only was it something that benefited them, but it was something that benefited me just as much, relative to what our expectations of benefits would be. And I think this can be applied to something like being a family member as well, especially now that I'm moved away and I'm at college right now. A lot of my family time has been completely limited, completely cut, to the point where I have it's only like once a month, maximum like 2 times a month, in which I'm able to see my family, which I know will just continue to taper off lower and lower as as time goes on and as we mature, from children to adults. And if that's the case, then I believe that I have a moral obligation to be the best family member possible whenever I am present with my family, because this time is so limited. I have the obligation to be the best brother to my older brother and my younger brother. Obligation to be the best son to my mother and my father. Obligation to be the best family member in general. When I'm with them, making sure that I try to do activities with them. I try to talk to them. I try to, just continue to continue to maintain that bond, that very, very strong bond that we have with each other into into times in which we may not, spend every day together, like any time at all, any extended period of time together, really for like the rest of my life. It's a sobering realization, but it makes me realize that that obligation to excellence in terms of being a family member will not only benefit our family dynamic, but it'll benefit each family member with whom I interact, and will also benefit myself. So this moral obligation is not something that is just it's not a one-sided operation. It's a multi-pronged approach in which everybody that's involved in the situation benefits. And I think the last thing that I want to touch on is that I think excellence is not defined as outputs. In terms of, if you were a teacher, for example, I think you have a moral obligation to provide the best education to your students possible. That is your moral obligation based on what you chose to spend your life doing. However, that does not mean that all of your students like pass the state exam with flying colors, or if you're a AP class teacher, that all your students get a 5 on an AP test. Because what you can't do is control the outputs of each individual student. You can't. That's impossible. What you can do is control the inputs that you do in terms of the lectures that you provide, in terms of the homework that you provide, in terms of the support that you provide for each student, in terms of how much knowledge you have of the material that you teach. These inputs are what we have the moral obligation of excellence towards. What that means is, going back to the family example, the inputs of communication and empathy and just being a caring son and a caring brother, as much as possible. These inputs, I can't necessarily control how my parents or how my brothers would react to my inputs. However, as long as I know that I'm putting that good faith effort forward, that is what that excellence means. In the same way that at my job, I can't necessarily control, if they wanted to continue to have me as a part of their team after the summer. All I could just control is the quality of the way that I wash the dishes. Are they washed well? Are they washed quickly? The way that I would scrub the bathrooms, the way that I would clean the floors, the way that I would do all of that stuff, all that grunt work. Just the excellence, the obligation of excellence to the inputs of each thing that we choose that we choose to spend a significant amount of time of our life towards. That is, I think, the obligation that we have, and I hope I made a good argument for that in this video.